All right. Everyone's seen my screen. Good to go. Thumbs up. Yay, nay. Excellent. All right. So tonight, we're all going to be diving into the world of low incidence disabilities, students with low incidence disabilities, also multiple severe disabilities. You may have heard some of these terms before. You may come across teachers or the talk of the town, with students with like severe, profound, or moderate intellectual disabilities, and some other eligibilities, and we'll go through those tonight. There's a whole world of each of these disabilities, so we're just going to be like touching the surface of these, just to kind of get you introduced to what to expect. You may or may not interact with students that are in these classrooms. Like you hear a lot of students or in the classrooms that are in like self-contained classrooms where they're in a specific classroom all day long with a certain group of students and teachers. So we're going to be touching on that topic tonight. So just quick, what's filling your bucket today? Like what are you excited about? What are you happy about? Is there anything that's just draining you? For example, for me is coming down to the end of the semester, especially being at Clemson, being with the PhD program, it's starting to wind down, and it's kind of like everything comes together at the end, and you're kind of rushing through it to making sure you have everything put into gear. But anybody want to share anything that's filling your bucket, or draining you?
Coming back after the break was rough today.
Yeah, that was definitely draining coming back for sure. Yeah. Seeing my friend. Yeah. Yep. Christmas time. Yeah. Drain. Yeah. Final project.
Finals.
Yes. Final projects, final papers, whatever it may be. Stressed about. Oh, yeah. But Christmas, I'm excited about Christmas too. Just the whole holidays and just getting things kicked off with that. And especially at work, all the festivities and everything going around with that. So that's great. Awesome.
Someone's Alyssa, you're building a computer tomorrow? Like,
Building
Yeah,
computer.
like a real computer?
yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
That sounds fancy.
Wow. For personal use, is this something just, that's pretty wild.
Is this for a class?
No, it's just for fun.
What?
Oh,
Okay. Hey.
you build computers on the side for fun? Is that your side hustle, girl?
I wish that sounds cool.
Yeah, listen, you could probably build them and like sell them. People might buy them. Make yourself a
Refurbished,
little
yeah.
money doing it.
A lot cheaper, yeah. Well, those are great. Awesome. Those are fantastic. So the topics today, we're going to be talking, with these low incidence, severe multiple disabilities. We're going to talk about some defining what those are, the prevalence, how rare certain things are, like percentages. And here's some of the ones that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about deaf blindness, traumatic brain injury, insomnia, you might hear, or like it's called TBI, intellectual disabilities. So we want to talk on those three disabilities. We're also going to talk about what, as you as a teacher, what can you consider and help out and dealing with early interventions, transitions, and also for you as being teaching, going into teaching, what kind of assessments are, as you as a teacher, you can provide for preference for getting to know your students. So we're going to talk about those little topics tonight. So high incidence disabilities. So we've been going through this course. We've been talking about all these different eligibilities, right? We've been talking about learning disabilities. We talked about speech and language disorders. We've talked about emotional disorders or emotional behavioral disorders, mild intellectual disabilities. These are what are known as high incidence disabilities, disabilities or eligibilities that occur at a high frequency. So I know the big ones that we hear a lot of is the learning disabilities, the emotional behavioral disorders are the big ones that we hear a lot of, especially speech language disorders. So quick, someone can just shout it out. Give me an example of a high incidence disability.
Speech language
Perfect. Excellent. Anyone, anything different? Is there another one? Anyone? Just shout it out. I'll go back. High incidence. There you go. So
SLD, SLD.
SLD, yeah. LD, SLD, yeah. EBD, all over the place. And these are, remember, these are the ones that occur frequently. Okay. So on the other end of the spectrum, we have low incidence disabilities. All right. So these are the disabilities that occur at a low frequency. You may not encounter or be involved with students with certain disabilities, deaf blindness, severe and profound intellectual disabilities. This is the population that I work with. Autism, believe it or not, it's on the rise. As far as being a low incidence disability, there is research that shows that it's now more considered leaning towards a high incidence disability. Just because, everything that when we went over with students with autism, the availability, the just getting a better understanding of that. And then traumatic brain injury, or TBI, is known as a low incidence disability, but we're seeing a increase in the number for TBI as well. So here's just the quick list, because I'm going to let you know the next question is, give me an example of, let's see, a low incidence disability. So what we got, give me an example of a low incidence disability.
Deaf blindness.
Perfect. Excellent. Is there another one?
Traumatic brain injury.
Perfect. I'll take it. Excellent. Very good.
They're coming in
Right.
the chat too. TBI.
Chats, they're going off the chain right now.
Yep.
Excellent.
Nice job.
Perfect.
Good job listening, everybody.
All right. So going in next to with autism, why is there an increase in students with autism? Well, identification purposes, we talked about that in the past. And also the identification of milder cases of autism is there. TBI, you mean traumatic brain injury, there is an increase, likely due to increases in spinal cord injuries that are either, for example, sports, vehicular accidents, also medical care. There's an increase in survival of that severe physical trauma. And when we get into TBI, when we discuss a little bit TBI, I have had a student in the past with the TBI who came to me at the high school level. And so when we get into that and the definition of TBI and what that looks like, I'll just kind of share with y'all that situation. So those are some of the reasons on why we're seeing that increase and why we're kind of shifting from that low incidence disability, moving in towards more of that high incidence disabilities. So the low incidence disabilities, okay, are kind of like intertwined. They're, a spiral, like a corkscrew. So they're all linked. A lot of them are linked together. So for like low incidence disabilities, severe and multiple disabilities, like I said, are often linked conceptually. So there's this little picture here of how they're intertwined. All of them require that extensive, very specific, specialized support where it's constant. You're receiving that at, at like a large dose or a lot of information, a lot of support there. And usually you have students that are typically, they have more than one disability. They may have multiple disabilities. And that's where that comes in. I have students in my case that eligibilities are severe intellectual disability, but also have another disability in speech language disorder. So they have those multiple disabilities. So this is just a good little visual representation on how they are all kind of linked together. So the prevalence is low, really low, like 1% or less. Represent a relatively small percentage. Usually when, with students with, low incidence, severe, profound, or multiple severe disabilities, it's going to be less than 1% of the population. So you're looking at a very small group. All right. So what percentage or what would you say the prevalence of low incidence multiple or severe disabilities would be? Good. I saw some people mouthing out 1. Excellent. Very good. Yep. Less than 1, 1% less than 1. Excellent. Very good. So we'll get into our first one, deaf blindness. Okay. So in order to have this eligibility of deaf blindness, okay, you are going to have both. You have to have both deaf and blindness. So speech not understood even when it's amplified. So the having the speech there, and also the blindness, if you have 200 vision there, most people you have like 20/20 vision, but looking at 200 or less. Primary way of receiving information, basically a lot of it is through different sounds and sight. There are, there's problems in that communication and navigating through different environments, like in your classroom or out in public, like when you guys did the ADA accessibility chart. One of those was, how easy was it to navigate through that environment? And some of y'all even mentioned, I think it was one of the locations on some of the aisles and walking through there, even if you were in a wheelchair. It's like, how do you do that? It's not very friendly. It's not user friendly. So students who are deaf and blind have those problems with moving around the environment and navigating. Also being able to communicate what those issues are and how to do that are definitely go with that. Factors that affect the outcomes of learners. So the quality and intensity of instruction received, like the quality you want to get into the, being specific, very systematic, like step by step, and the intensity, it goes based on how your student, knowing your student, and knowing what levels of intensity to provide that student with tasks in the classroom. Degree and type of visual and auditory impairment varies dramatically. Not every student is going to be the same. It's going to be different. And then also, vast majority of the students have other disabilities and other medical conditions that also impede or affect those educationally and even life outcomes, life outside of school in the community. So deaf blindness, some prevalence, it's rare. 1 in every 1,000 people from birth to age 21, according to the latest research. And there are multiple causes for deaf blindness. It can be genetic, which are a chromosomal syndrome. And these are some Charge syndrome, which is wild. Charge syndrome, I don't know a lot about it. I even had to go dig in some research about it. But when I was reading through it, according to statistics, Charge syndrome, it occurs in about 1 out of every about 150,000 individuals. So it is it's extremely rare. Usher syndrome is another. It's a genetic. It affects both hearing and vision, and it's rare. It's 1 in every. I think the research was about 1 in about every 17,000 individuals. So it's another rare genetic disease, and Down syndrome with deaf blindness. And I don't know if everyone's heard of Down syndrome. That seems to be the one that a lot of individuals, are familiar with. So we have genetics as one cause. We also have prenatal conditions such as rubella or measles. These are all things, that happen, before. But we also have postnatal, such as meningitis and TBI, are also causes of deaf blindness. So the question I'm going to ask is, what are the different causes of deaf blindness? So you just name 1. I know we just went over 3 of them. So if there was 1, if you just want to mention 1, this chromosomal genetic, postnatal and prenatal, very good. So those are all different. So we're going to genetic, perfect, excellent, very good. Okay, so the next one is considering what kind of educational considerations for students with deafblind who have an eligibility of deaf blindness. Well, the earlier that you identify it is important. So why would you think the early identification is important? What are some reasons why you think early identification? Intervention, yeah, so you can introduce, right, early intervention, excellent, I like that, getting help earlier, perfect, those are great responses. You know, the earlier you can identify it, the more help assistance you can work on, you can get, you know, others to help out. Ooh, I like that, to best know how to accommodate, what kind of accommodations, what kind of modifications, you know, you can be provided. Or starting earlier may be easier. Very good, excellent. So one of the early interventions, one of the early identifications intervention we use are, you probably heard of them as cochlear implants, medical interventions. Even as you as teachers, you know, direct teaching, you know, making sure you're very direct to that towards that individual and giving those specific accommodations, modifications to allow that student, you know, to be successful. You know, use routines, you know, set up in your classroom using those routines, allowing your student to be familiar, knowing what is going to happen, or being able to predict, you know, instead of just throwing the student out for a loop of changing your routine. And it'll happen sometimes. And that's just, you know, the nature of education. But trying to stick to those routines, being verbal, you know, showing and having an open that communication with your students, you know, communication, hands, using hand signals, you know, primary means, you know, there's Braille. A lot of you guys with ADA handout, you mentioned that one of the big things was Braille and the use of Braille on signs on outside of the doors, going into the bathroom, on the restrooms, the elevator. It's all over the place. Like even at the school I'm at now, we have Braille on every like room sign. There's Braille. Going into the restrooms, there's Braille. So the adapted signs are another thing. You know, the signs may be bigger, they may be enlarged so that you can visually see them easier. Touch cues is another big thing about being able to use that communication. Orientation and mobility is another consideration you can use as teachers, you know, navigating through the environment, assistant cards, you know, having the student be familiar with the environment, using little cards of what him or her want next, you know, the use of canes for the vision, the blindness considerations. So for Usher syndrome, since, you know, this one, that progressive, what that is it progresses really quickly. And usually it occurs between when the student or the individual reaches probably around the age of 10 and through their early teens. And what that over time, it moves really quickly, and it does, you know, affects, you know, their hearing and vision. So like when I asked earlier about early identification, y'all mentioned, early intervention, get them familiar with the environment, train them in Braille, using, you know, how to orient themselves to different locations, how to use mobility through their environment. So those are some things, you know, to help with that early intervention and assist those students. So what is one possible medical intervention? It was mentioned briefly for hearing impairments. What was that? Cochlear implants, perfect. Yep. Excellent, very good. Okay, so what can you name me two potential educational considerations? So what are some things that you as an educator or a teacher could assist or prepare students who are deaf blind? Braille, audio, yeah, audio technology, Braille, touch cues, very good. I like it. Direct instruction, routines. Did someone say textured? Textured books, very good. Yeah, textured books is great. Having physical space in the classroom, that would be amazing. Physical space in the classroom can be tricky, but yeah, always use subtitles on educational videos or Braille. I use subtitles now on some of the shows I watch. So those are all great. Excellent. You got that down. Good stuff. Okay, so traumatic brain injury, okay, or known as TBI. It's brain damage acquired from a trauma, and it results in, has to be a neurological, cognitive, and psychosocial. So those are their effects. Injury to the brain caused by an external force. So, for example, I had a student. He is now transferred. He's graduated by now, but this was some time ago. He came to me at 16, and he came from out of the county. And he was a prominent, really upcoming football star in middle school. We're talking like high school coaches and some colleges were already looking at him in the future. And he was with a group of friends, decided to go swimming in the local swimming pool and dove headfirst in the shallow end and broke his neck, and ended up being eligible for a traumatic brain injury. So he came to me, and this was the only means of communication this individual had was through blinking of his eyes. He was able to blink once for yes and twice for no. So everything that we did was revolved around simple yes or no questions. Their instruction was very direct, even down to hygiene care. It was very yes or no, like, training and working things on those, and like on those adaptive skills, like the hygiene and like the life skills, feedings, eating. So that was won by that external force. But was also an open head or closed head injury. It's neurological, or it can be a neurobehavioral dysfunction. Students or individuals who result that in diminished or altered state of consciousness, going in and out of consciousness. But it can also be called, injury not caused by degenerative or congenital conditions over time. So that's just the thing for TBI. So TBI, true or false? Can it be? Is a congenital disorder? Good. False. Very good. Excellent. All right. Very good. So here's just an idea with IDA. You should all be familiar with this, especially in the world of special education. IDA definition is an acquired injury to the brain caused by an external physical force resulting in total or partial functional disability or psychosocial impairment, or it can even be both. And it also affects the child's educational performance. And this was added to IDEA in 2004, an amendment. So prevalence, we're talking about the prevalence. How often does it occur? Prevalence is around, 4% of students, being served under IDEA have a traumatic brain injury. 16% of those individuals who are diagnosed with having TBI are considered on the moderate to severe side of it. And also males are more prone than females. So those are some facts with the prevalence for traumatic brain injury. Causes we talked about earlier. Many of the causes are preventable or avoidable. We talked about, the car accidents, slips and trips, even assault, having being of assault, domestic violence and child abuse is one of the causes of traumatic brain injury. A lot of times we don't like to hear stuff like that, but being in education, it may pop up. Being hit by a blunt or falling object, bicycling accidents, and then, with my student, diving in a swimming pool. So here with the causes, usually if you're looking at under the age of 5, it shows that a lot of it is accidental falls, car accidents, or other types of vehicular accidents, and even child abuse. Those that are older than 5, usually it's vehicular accidents is one of the big causes. And youth at an older age, once out of adolescence, a lot of it is through assaults or gunshot wounds, according to research. So those are just some of the causes of traumatic brain injury. It's a wide spectrum for sure. All right, so one, who are more prone to traumatic brain injury? Who would you say are more prone? Yep, males. Good. And what is one of the cause, or name a cause of TBI that can be preventable? Yep, trips and falls. Excellent. Yep, good. Use just an accident. Very good. Falls, car accident. Yep, very good. So here's some of the effects which for students or individuals who suffer with a traumatic brain injury. This is just little hodgepodge here. Everything from remembering simple things, remembering things. Their speech and language may be affected. Sequencing events, tying your shoe or making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that sequence of events. Having, not picking up on humor, having inappropriate manners, irritability, aggression, easily tired and frustrated, irritability, these are all possible effects of traumatic brain injury. So name 2 possible effects of TBI. We just went over a bunch of them. So name 2, just name 1. Just what do you think? Give it some anger, mood swings, irritability, depression. Excellent. Mood swings, irritability, mood swings, depression. Yes, those are all possible side effects. Yep. Aggression, depression. Yep. Very good. Inappropriate actions. Very good. Good job. So consideration. So what can you do? What, as an educator, what can you do? How can you assist? What are some things to look at? They're very, like we said earlier, the nature of the severity of the injury will require different educational needs. And that comes from knowing the student, having that communication with other family members, other resources, other teachers who may have taught the student in the past, building those relationships and getting to know that student. Like we said here, talking with the parents, peers, all of that. Another good thing, a big thing is having that transition. I remember with my student having conversations with his mom and working with her on how it was going to be or what education would look like coming from the hospital aspect back into the school. Because evidently, there was a lot of good questions, concerns about the safety of the student within the classroom, being in the hospital, being watched over, being specifically taken care of, and then coming to the school. What kind of approach did we have? How well did we work with the nurse there at the school? If the student had some issues with hygiene, how would we handle that issue? So just having that open communication, and always remember, and for all of us, and being in education, have that team approach, reach out for help, ask questions. If you don't know what to do, ask, and work together and build that community approach. You may be asked as a general ed teacher, for feedback in the IEP process. You may be asked to serve on a student's IEP team. And yes, you'll be in there, providing that general education, that curriculum. But you'll also be there as a team, to work with different social and cognitive and goals that for the student as being part of that team. Strategies, you want, to think of strategies to hold that attention, learning new things. What is that going to look like? How, building a time frame, building those short-term goals, engaging in those social behavior skills is going to be a big thing, especially with students, what we talked about, being irritated or having the mood swings or depression, and working with that, and focus on the process, not just the content, is a big thing, not worrying about just on specific content, but worrying about that process of getting to that information and understanding and grasping, and providing, like you said earlier, providing those accommodations and modifications to help with that process of gaining and learning new skills. That's a lot. TBI is a lot. So we're about to throw out some more for you. Severe and multiple disabilities. This is a term that it's pretty involved. And you have heard of intellectual disabilities, but what exactly is it? And according to the IDEA, an intellectual disability means a significant sub-average intellectual functioning. It affects your adaptive behaviors and cognitive. It's manifested during the developmental period that adversely affects a child's educational performance. And the term intellectual disability, you may have heard it. I hate saying the word. But for educational purposes, a lot of people, have heard the term mental retardation was one of the big, the terms. And in fact, in 1990, an amendment with the IDEA actually eliminated the term mental retardation to use intellectual disability. And when you think about it, 1990, in my, looking back, it wasn't that long ago. And I still encounter individuals today who would still use that term, the R word. And, as an educator, it's, I feel like I have to just educate that someone or whoever it was, and, just letting them know, hey, that's not the right terminology. Here's what we use instead. But this comes straight from the IDEA for a definition. So the criteria, what to be included in this severe multiple disabilities. So a comprehensive evaluation, okay, you have to have that done. We talked about those back about being tested. It has to indicate deficits in both intellectual functioning and also those adaptive behavior skills. Okay. Well, what are those? What do those look like? So intellectual functioning, like, being able to problem solve, or reasoning skills, or just how you learn in your intellectual functioning. But the big thing is adaptive behavior. That falls into those real world skills, those social skills, work skills, social skills. I work a lot with students with their hygiene skills and those life skills for sure. And just having those personal responsibilities. So that to be included with that, you must have deficits in both of intellectual functioning and adaptive behavior. So you need to have those both. So you hear intellectual disabilities, and there's a wide range. There's a range. You hear a lot of it like mild intellectual disabilities, or MI. You have moderate intellectual disabilities, or MO is what we refer to a lot in education. So when you think of IQ score ranges, average IQ score 80, 85 to like 100, 115. That would be considered like an average IQ scale. Well, individuals with moderate intellectual disabilities, their IQ score range is between 35 and 54 is what you're looking at for their IQ. And they require moderate support. All right. So you may notice some developmental delays like in speech or motor skills, like those fine motor or gross motor skills in your classroom. These individuals can communicate basic, simple ways, maybe simple sentences, quick responses, basic health and safety skills like hygiene care, self-care activities. A lot of times students with moderate intellectual disabilities can work with that. And they even, students with that can travel alone, or familiar places, can go from one place to another that's familiar. So that's the moderate. Severe, you're looking at the severe, you have IQ range of 20 to 34. And these individuals require a bit more extensive support. Okay. Major delays in development, can learn simple daily routines, like coming in, like the routines that, like with my classrooms, I serve students with severe and profound intellectual disabilities. So it's very routine oriented, very scheduled. There's some students that come in and have a very specific routine. They've learned daily routines. They come in, they know when breakfast is happening. They know when they finish breakfast, what to do next, what to transition from the next task. So learning those simple daily routines is possible. Simple self-care activities, going to the restroom, asking, can I go to the restroom, and knowing where that restroom is at, and can do the more everyday basic self-care activities like brushing teeth or dressing appropriately, putting on shoes, washing hands, some of those simple self-care activities. Also need family care to live in a supervised setting, such as a group home. Once students transition or graduate, where do we go? A lot of times I work with a lot of parents that prepare for living at home, once they graduate, and being as independent as possible at home with those supports. Also looking into other group homes that provide a structured, routine-based activities day to day, and sees great success. I have students that have graduated and moved into group homes and have flourished, and they stick to a routine. They go out onto job sites, they learn about simple day-to-day life activities and are very, very successful. So there are, those available. And then finally, we have profound intellectual disabilities, or PID. And these are individuals who have a IQ score range of less than 20. These individuals require the most extensive supports. This is constant supervision. The individual needs help with all self-care activities, cannot be left alone, cannot live independently. A lot of these activities, for example, in the classroom, will look like just trying to be as independent as possible with those aids and services, working very closely with families, working with other individuals at the district level of like occupational therapy and physical therapy, providing those resources and working with the parents for when the student does eventually graduate or transition from high school, or even elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. What can we provide to help that individual be successful and be happy and be part of the classroom and be independent? Those we deal a lot with in the hygiene care, feedings, tube feedings, hygiene care as far as like changes like diapers and bowel movements, and, proper care and cleaning, is we, work a lot with that. And any kind of assistance we can get with, even with the student, helping out, whether it be holding on to an item to hand to myself, or, walking to the kitchen area with help and knowing where the soap dispenser is. So that constant supervision. So that is dealing with students who have profound intellectual disabilities. Okay, so moving on. So we just covered a lot of these different low incidence disabilities, having multiple and severe disabilities. So what can you do as a teacher? What are these evidence-based strategies that you can implement in the classroom? One, it says right here, follow principles of explicit instruction. Research shows that explicit instruction it's evidence-based. Students have great success, highly specific to the individual needs. So remember that getting to know the student and building your level of instruction based on those individual students' needs. So, I mean, I think all of y'all, have y'all ever heard of the I do, we do, you do? Has anyone ever heard of that? If that mode of explicit instruction before?
We practiced some of that when we did direct instruction. Remember when you guys were in your group, you did, we did, you did some of that.
Yeah.
Where you felt
So,
really
like,
awkward doing it.
Yes. So like I do, I do, we do, you do, like the I do section is like you as a teacher, you model those steps, you provide an example, you work through an example to give those students, that visual representation in that practice. So that's I do. And then we do is kind of like a team effort, right? You as a teacher, you'll complete some of the steps and you'll be guiding, with the other students. You kind of fade back a little bit and allow those students to complete, those remaining tasks or whatever that assignment or object item that you're working on. So we do. Then you do is that you complete. What you do is that you're activating that prior knowledge with the students and that the student is going to complete that task, right? So it's I do, we all do, and then you as a student, you do it. So it's kind of like that individual is showing you and coming back to you with what they have learned and using what that knowledge that you've worked with them for. So that's kind of an example of like that explicit instruction, kind of like a step-by-step, very specific. So another thing that can be used, another consideration for students with low incidence disabilities, multiple severe disabilities, is the use of an augmentative or an alternative communication device, or you may hear it as like an AAC device. I have a student now that has an AAC device and he uses it for his mode of communication. Like if we're wanting to work on a specific activity or a task that we've asked for him to work on, we will use his device, ask questions, and have him respond to us using his device. And a lot of times the students will use that device due to physical or cognitive disabilities or neurological damage, and it's using that to communicate through just normal speech. So you could see some examples down here. You have everything from like, I know some of y'all were working on like the PECS, the picture exchange communication system for your assignment. And that's awesome because you're using those pictures to use as communication. It can be used manually or electronic. And it's how to express yourself and how, to share information. I have another student who uses it solely based on the purpose when he wants something to eat or drink. When he wants, his thing is chips and salsa. He loves chips and salsa. So I or my other teachers, my parapros in the classroom, will specifically ask him, what are you wanting? What would you like? We'll ask him, use your device and tell us what you want. And there are buttons on there that he'll hit that says chips or salsa or bathroom. Or sometimes he'll even mention a new one we've brought in and working with this, the speech teacher, is the use of refrigerator. He'll say if he wants something specific, we'll say, well, where is it located? And he'll have to tell us. Where is it located? So using that as much as possible to use that use of communication. And it can be anywhere from low tech to high tech. Like we said, just the pictures, the high tech, these elaborate these computers, maybe, building a computer for high tech, these communication devices would be amazing. And you as a teacher, working with your special ed department and asking around what devices are available. You may have a student show up in your classroom that uses one of these devices for communicating and throughout the class. So there's a wide range of them. I have another student that we use a poster board, and we have pictures, and he goes up, and if he wants to go somewhere, like for a walk, if he wants to go to the gym, or if he wants to go up to the cafeteria for lunch, he goes and gets that picture, and he will then put it up on the board and point to that picture. So he'll use those gestures saying, ooh, I want to go here, or I want to, I want to go to the gym and then play basketball. Even to at the end of the day, it's time to get on the bus. So he goes and gets a picture of a school bus and puts it on the board and points to the bus. So showing us that, hey, it's the end of the day, it's time to go get on the bus. So that's used quite often. And there's a wide range of those. So some other considerations, you may have students or individuals that have behavioral problems. And one thing to point out here is that not all students exhibit behavior problems, like self-stimulation. That's something that I've worked and had to deal with. Self-injury, such as banging head on the desk or against a wall, or getting a pencil and tapping or hitting their arm, or I've even had students with erasers and rub it on their arms for that burning sensation. Tantrums, aggression towards others is another behavioral problem for students. Or it can be a combination of any of those. Aggression towards others, the main focus on that is making sure safety is a big thing, not only for the student, for the other students, but also, the teachers maintaining that safety. So, being trained to handle those aggression tendencies, the self-injury, in the proper legal way is something we have to do. I have to do yearly to be certified and caught up and filled in for all that for my classroom, and, documenting the behaviors and other things like that. And some other things you can do, an FBA or a functional behavioral assessment, figuring out what's going on, when it's occurring, why it's occurring, the length, what is the individual trying to get out of it? And then providing those positive behavioral supports are some big suggested supports to help with those behavioral problems. Okay, so one educational consideration. So what are some things that we consider? One of them, I'll give you an example now, was the behavioral problems. So what was another one that would AAC, PECS, the picture I was doing with the AAC, very good. Good. Explicit instruction, very good. So I think we covered them all. Explicit instruction, the evidence-based strategies, excellent, very good. AAC devices and the behavioral problems, very good, are some educational considerations to go into. Excellent, very good. Okay, so teaching tips. Really quickly, understand the child's disability, understand his or her present needs, just knowing your student, getting to know the student, breaking down those tasks one step at a time. For tasks that have a lot of different steps to it, have different ways of communicating it, whether it be through pictures or written down, like very small chunks. Model the behaviors, model how to perform those tasks, allow that student to help out. And watching you or others doing that. And I think some of y'all even put your topic for your project was video modeling. I love video modeling. I'm all game. If any of y'all are interested in video modeling, hook me up. Contact me. I'll be more than happy to talk about video modeling with any of y'all. It works wonders on all different ages, levels. it's just a powerful tool with modeling and showing how to perform those tasks. Consistent routines, making sure that you have very specific, stay on task, keep that routine going. Even letting your students know in advance if there's going to be a change in the routine, letting him or her know that, hey, we have a fire drill coming up today, at this time. Here's what we're going to do to prepare for it. Starting that off first thing in the morning, even if it's the day before, and then continue reminding those students saying, hey, we have a fire drill coming up in 10 minutes. We have a fire drill that's about to happen. Here's what we're going to do. Develop methods to organize, have the students, self-monitor and self-assess and develop, monitor behaviors. Like you said, some of y'all, the check-in, check-out system. Great. That's fantastic. Making folders or graphic organizers to help, develop those steps and performing new tasks to help the individual see that. So those are all different teaching tips. So name one teaching tip. And then you can write it, you can shout it out. Modeling, perfect. Instruction slowly, video modeling, yep. Step by step, going very specific, breaking down the tasks, modeling the behaviors and modeling the task for the students. Very good. Okay, so what else can be done? Early intervention. Maybe early in life, at the birth, or as soon as possible. As soon as that individual or child, is found eligible for a certain disability, the earlier the better. You get involved with that student's life, getting that student, getting them ready. And there's some intervention programs that are research-based, family-centered practices, even focusing on the different multicultural perspectives or cross-disciplinary, collaboration. And making sure those are age-appropriate practices are also, key. And those developmental and chronologically age-appropriate practices are big. A big thing for me is transition services. Getting students prepared to leave high school and into the community, whether that's going into a post-secondary training program like Clemson Life. A lot of colleges now are branching out and have these post-secondary programs, even being able to go in and teach those living skills and preparing for life after school, self-determination, working with coworkers and getting involved in the community early. So when the transition does occur, the students can smoothly work their way right into what they've already been practicing and getting ready for.
I'm actually at a 2-day conference just on that stuff.
On transition services?
Yep, it's the task conference. It's all about transition, and that my PhD actually is a focus on transition. So how do we help the students once they graduate?
Yeah, and that's something that we start working on at age 16. Some students, some even start at the age of 14. Working on those transition services and trying to get that interest in what the students feel and what they prefer. And that's what we're about to get into preference assessments. I don't even know what time it is, 6:40. So preference assessments are something that you as teachers can look into doing and getting to know your students and their preferences. So what do those look like? Why do we use preference assessments? Okay, so for older children and typically developing children, we want to look at, potential reinforcers. Like if we're trying to look at a targeted behavior, let's say a specific behavior that we're noticing, what can we use as a reinforcer, like as a reward, like a positive reinforcer? And a lot of times you can simply just ask the student what he or she like, or what do they like to do, or what do they want to work towards, so that's a why. Who it can be used for: younger children, in elementary school, middle, high school, children with disabilities. So it works on that wide, range. And what you're going to do is you just do observations, and what that'll help you develop is help you understand what those items the children highly prefers, like, ooh, I love this thing, I want to work towards this. to even to items where the student's like, yeah, I'll do it. Okay, that's cool. To where maybe there's something or an item or a task they just do not like. And you as a teacher, you will help by doing those observations, you'll be able to, you know, get a better understanding of those preferred items. Some examples, you know, you've got different toys, you know, food items. It could be as simple as social interactions, hanging out with a teacher or a friend, at different activities, you know, getting on the computer or an iPad or listening to some music, going and visiting, you know, a new location. You know, oh, I want to go to, you know, the media center, you know, and just kind of browse around and just look through everything that they have to offer. So those are just some examples that are available. So there are different types. There are free operant observations, and there's even paired stimulus preference assessments. And we're just going to briefly go over those two. And there are more. There are other different assessments. But those are the two, the free operant observations and the paired are pretty, you know, we use those, I've used those before. And a lot of times you use them and you don't even realize you're using them, but there are forms that you can put together to do those. So the first one is free operant observations. And basically that is who you're working with, you work with all children who may have difficulty when high preferred items are removed. Let's say a student has a love of a certain type of toy, whether it's a toy phone or a toy, you know, a pencil or something like that, some kind of toy or a little stuffed animal. And what you'll be doing is that it will take place in a classroom where that item is available. You know, you're going to provide that item to the student. And what you're basically going to do for a total of 5 minutes, you're going to have those things sitting out in front of the student and you're going to observe and you're just going to write down how long that student engages with that specific item. And it's as simple as for, you know, let's say if it's a cell phone, like a little toy phone, let's say the individual out of the 5 minutes is involved and uses that little toy phone for chewing on it, looking at it, you know, anything. And let's say it's for 4 minutes and 25 seconds. So that's what you would record, that student and was involved with that for 4.5 minutes. So for an example, here's an example here. We're not going to watch the video because it is like about 5.5 minutes long. But throughout this video, you can see in this picture, this teacher here is with a student in a room with the camera, of course, and there are some items on the table. And she allows this student to grab any of those items. And as soon as that student starts interacting with that item, she starts a timer or a recorder. And you can use your cell phone. You know, if you have a clock in there, anything of that nature, you can just record how long that student engages with that item. And let's say in this case, it was a spinner, a little fidget spinner. So it was 1 minute and 30 seconds of that 5 minutes she interacted with that fidget spinner. And eventually the student set it down. And when she set it down and left it alone, she stopped the timer and recorded that. And if she picked up another item, she recorded that over the course of 5 minutes. And that will allow you to say, ooh, this student really loves this item. So when we're working on rewards, I can incorporate that with that student for that reinforcement. Here's another observation. And this one is long. The comment here is that Owen plays with stickers. That's his thing. That's his jam for 10 minutes. So for that, over that course of 10 minutes, the teacher there was recording how long the student was engaged with the stickers. And that was a matter of looking through sticker books, taking them out, the stickers, and decorating. I think there was a Mr. Potato Head there and putting stickers on the Mr. Potato Head toy. And so it just kind of, again, it just gives you data as a teacher to see what your students really love and what they don't like. So the next one is the paired. This one is a little more information. but it's not too bad. So what you do is you have a student who can scan, who can look at two different items that are placed in front of him or her. Okay. You have a highly preferred, and a lowly preferred item. And it can be done in the classroom, if possible. And you are basically going to observe and track which item that student selects. So if you're given two different items, you're going to record A or B. If the students choose A, you circle the letter A. Oh, boom, that student prefers that object over the other. And the length, you can be different times, but the only thing about it is that it can be time consuming. You can have a lot of items or a lot of different things going on. And this is just an example of a sheet. You can see here where the items, a toy, a plush toy, I think it was a spinner toy, a water wiggly, and a toy phone. And here are the items. This was a total, it doesn't say how long it took, but you can look, like the first trial she gave Christopher, trial 1A, gave him a plush toy and a spinner toy. And of those two items, he selected the spinner toy. So looking at that, look at trial number 5. What two items did Miss Winnie give Christopher for trial 5? So it was D and B. Which were those? What was given? Okay, spinner toy and a toy phone. Good. So looking at the item selection, which item did Christopher select in trial number 5? Was it the toy phone or was it the spinner toy? Yeah, it was the spinner toy, right? So she just circled the spinner toy. And so what that will show you as a teacher will show you of those courses, those 6 different trials. It shows the teacher that Christopher selected A, which was a push toy, 0 times. So that can tell you that Christopher could care less about a push toy. So what item of those did Christopher find to be the most interactive or his highest preferred item? Perfect. Water. Yeah, it was item C. You can see he used it out of those trials, those 6 trials. He picked that item 3 of those 6 trials. So that tells you that, okay, that was his highest preferred item. So that is a paired stimulus assessment that you can use. Perfect. Very good. All right. So this is the video. This was like another 5-6 minute video. And this was these 2 teachers working with this student, and they were recording what the student chose. And the items were Sesame Street, a workbench, a piano, and a guitar. And what the video shows is that the teacher did not make it through all of the pairs. So there's where it can be time consuming, and just knowing if you throw out an item and the student gravitates to that one item all the time, then boom, you have your information. So a lot of times you don't make it all the way through, and that's why you don't want to have 20 different trials for the student. You want to limit that to get your best information. So that's that paired preferred assessment. All right. So that's a lot of information. I went nuts. So in Zoom, in the Zoom chat, you can shout it out. One thing that through all this information that was thrown out to you that you learned. Different type of reference. Yeah, cool.
There's that pattern with the boys more likely to have things.
I know, right? It's crazy. A lot of it is, yeah.
I like that one. The teacher definitely needs to know the student to understand the disability.
Yep. Perfect. By just as simply the different effects of TBI, the importance of video model. Very good. Having step-by-step task instructions benefit. Very good. Excellent. Yeah, okay, great. Very good. Okay. Ooh, so there we go. Any questions, concerns, comments? I know that was a lot of information, that was a big topic. And you know, I think the biggest thing is just to be familiar with the students with the severe multiple, you know, disabilities within your school, you know, even your classroom with, you know, I remember growing up when I was younger, when I was in elementary school, I don't remember really seeing, you know, or being around classrooms that you know, students with multiple severe disabilities. I don't remember, and I don't know if that was just me not knowing, or if it just wasn't the act of getting out and being involved within the school. And I mean, I think that might affect how I teach today, because I try to get out of that classroom as much as I can, to be involved as much as I can, having other students in the school being involved, you know. So,
And I'm even older than you, and I don't remember any kids like
yeah,
that in our classrooms. They were all in separate schools and stuff.
in separate schools, and so yeah, especially separate schools. Separate, yeah. I don't remember being too much about separate schools, but separate classrooms. But I do. Yeah, it's crazy to think that.
All
So
right,
yeah,
so just a few little, Mr. Hurley, that's awesome. Just a few little reminders. Next Monday is our last class. You know, Mr. Hurley and I are gonna miss you guys. You guys have been a good class. Right, Mr. Hurley?
it's been great.
It has. So like
Yes.
we said before, we review and we'll talk about physical disabilities and other health impairment, our last topic, and then we will have gone through all 13 disabilities in South Carolina. Plus we did some tier 1 and tier 2 interventions. So I think you guys got a full rounded effect. Like Mr. Hurley said, our final exam will be Monday, December 11th. I actually changed it so it's going to open at 12. And it's 55 questions. Look at Ansie's like, yes, thanks, Dr. Zumans. That's right. Mr. Hurley and I, we decided to give you guys some extra time to do it. So it opens at 12 on the 11th. It's 55 questions. You have to do it in one sitting. Now it's not timed or anything. It shouldn't take you more than 2.5 hours to complete, but you have to do it. So once you open it, you have to finish it. You can't open it and then stop and then go back, you know, I mean, and then like close it and then try and open again. So once you open it, you have to finish it. But you'll have till 11:59. So basically you'll have till midnight to finish it. So you got 12 hours to do the exam. I think it's plenty of time for you to get it done. And it's a combination of true, false, fill in the blank, short answer. And really, if you just review quizzes and everything else that we've done, you should do just fine. There shouldn't be any surprises on this. It's all about all the stuff you've learned all semester. That course evaluation is open until December 10th. And as always, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to either one of us. Anything else, Mr. Hurley?
No, just, yeah, like we said, just, you know, if you have any questions, anything, just reach out, let us know. And y'all, some of you,